welcome back to my channel. And how are you guys doing? I tell you guys doing. I can say I'm tired. I'm so tired. But you know what? On the bright side today, I have a mic. Can you hear that? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 7, 5, 6. I actually woke up to film this video and then I went back to bed because I was like, Paige, si utajinyonga. Eish, I was so tired. I was so sleepy. But anywho's, I don't want to talk too much because today's case is actually a very long case. Like, I literally wrote this case out and I was writing this case for 2 hours. Just the structure plan. So, let's hop right into today's case. Now, first of all, before I hop into anything or tell you anything about this case, I would like to put out a few disclaimers. Now, the first disclaimer is I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that I talk about in this video. Anything that I say in this video can be found online. And I do also want to put out a disclaimer. This case specifically had a lot of issues with dating it well. Like, some articles said it happened on October 25th. Some said like the dates were just jumbled up, etc. etc. So I will link the sources down below to show you the articles that I used for which sources that I used, because there wasn't a judgment available that I could find online. This case does concern the harming of minors, like children. So if you're not comfortable with listening to that, please leave now. This case also involves talks and themes of domestic abuse. So if you're also not comfortable with that, I would welcome you to leave now. Now, without further ado, let us hop right into today's video. Now, today we're going to be talking about the case of Miss Joyce Siombua. Now, this is a 2019 case, but it has not been concluded. So we're going to be discussing what basically the media has put out. Like I said, there's no available judgment that I could find because it's not yet done. So we're going to just be talking about what we know following the media frenzy and following like the ongoing court trial and the publications regarding the ongoing court trial. Right. So, to understand this case, we have to take it back to the childhood. And we're going to start with the name of the person who is the most important today in this case. And her name is Joyce Siombua. Who is Joyce Siombua, you might be asking? Now, when this case is taking place, Miss Joyce Siombua is 31 years old. This would mean that Joyce was born sometime in the late 1980s. I couldn't find an exact date for her. And Joyce was actually raised by a single mother. She came from a very loving home, but not much is known about her dad. I will say that. So what I'm trying to say is she was raised by a single mother. Joyce and her mother were very much close. It was a very us against the world type of situation. And Joyce's mother did everything she could to make sure that her daughter Joyce had everything in this life. She very much so valued education. So she really struggled through it all to get Joyce into schools and get Joyce through both primary and high school. Now, Joyce would attend the St. Bernard's High School in Kayole after graduating from primary, where she would meet two people that would be completely impactful for the rest of her life. Now, the first person Joyce would meet is her best friend for life. Her name is Farizana Siombua. Imagine meeting a best friend and like you guys have the same names. Isn't that so cute? That's so cute. Her and Farizana would become best friends for life. The two of them got along instantly. They got along really well. And Joyce and Farizana were basically inseparable. When I say inseparable, I mean inseparable. Even in their adult years, they would text, chat a lot. Now, the second person Joyce would meet was a man by the name of Peter Mugure. Now, Peter was 3 years older than Joyce, right? And when Peter met Joyce, Joyce was around 16, 17 years old. Now, Peter and Joyce quickly started liking each other. Like high schoolers, like just high schoolers. Peter and Joyce quickly started liking each other. And Peter says that he was love struck. He just couldn't imagine that there's a babe out here that's just moving like this babe. Like, this girl is the one for me. And Peter decides that, you know what? I'm going to marry this girl the second she graduates high school and the second that I'm done with my studies, we're getting married. Now, quick disclaimer. Like I said, Peter was 3 years older than Joyce. So, if he was 3 years older than Joyce and he met Joyce when she was 17, would that mean that Peter, 18, 19, 20, would be 20? And is that what? Anywho's, I don't know. I don't want to make any speculations about their age because I didn't see the age, but I don't know. The age would have been giving underage, overage. if you know what I'm saying. But hey, let's move on. Now, in 2005, Peter would take Miss Joyce Siambua to see his mother because he was like, I really want to marry this babe, and so as such, I should introduce her to my family. Peter took Joyce to see his mother, Miss Hannah Mugure, and honestly, Hannah and the rest of the family initially really loved Joyce. Hannah loved Joyce so much that after some days of just like getting to know Joyce, etc., at this point, Joyce is 17, might I add, she actually went over to Joyce's house to meet Joyce's mother. Her name is Elizabeth, by the way. She went over to Joyce's house to meet Joyce's mother and ask for Joyce's hand in marriage because the whole family said, son, you ain't gonna do better than this, honey. This is the real deal. So Hannah, Joyce, everybody is in agreement that the second that Joyce graduates from high school, the two of them were going to get married. Now, from what I could understand, as Joyce was in high school, Peter would attend the University of Nairobi to study civil engineering. Now, as soon as Joyce graduated in 2009, the two of them would get linked and hitched. Now, even though this sounds like a beautiful love story at the onset, no, honey. Turns out, literally the year after Peter took Joyce to see his family, because he took her in 2005, right? Turns out in 2006, the two actually had like a massive breakup. And after that breakup, Peter's family claims that they never heard of like Joyce again. Like they thought that the relationship had wrapped up, the relationship was gone, the relationship was done. So turns out Peter's family claims that like when the marriage took place in 2009, they didn't even know that Joyce and Peter were getting married in the first place. Crazy. Anywho's, the both of them get married in 2009, and according to one of Peter's friend, the couple would move over to Ongata Rongai in a house that Peter had gotten for them. The two of them would move to Ongata Rongai, and I'll tell you this, according to the people who knew them, the relationship was really toxic. Apparently, there was so many issues of domestic abuse and domestic, I don't want to say violence because I didn't see violence. I saw domestic abuse. So the two of them were always fighting, and according to Peter's friends, Peter was like, you know those people who are like, they fight and scream at home? They're like pretty two-faced because they fight and they scream at home, and then when they come outside, it's like, yeah, we just have the happiest marriage. Yeah. Or just bloody perfect, you know? So Peter would go outside there and act like, you know, this entire relationship is normal, this entire relationship is perfect. And I'm not trying to say that couples don't fight, but this type of fight, according to what people said, this one was a toxic level of fighting, and Peter would just come outside and act like everything was handy dandy in his household. Now, Joyce, on the other hand, would tell her friends, tell her mom, and she would tell everybody that, yeah, this man and me, like, things are just not going the way I anticipated them to have had to be going. Joyce was very open about the fact that the relationship was not going as well. Despite the level of like arguments and fighting in the house, Miss Joyce would quickly get pregnant. Now, the fighting didn't even decrease when when she got pregnant, because Peter started accusing Joyce of being infidel, of being unfaithful to him. Like, there'd be times they're arguing and Peter would just, you know, take the piss out of Joyce and just be like, that child you're carrying is not even my child, etc. And like, this would happen so often, and the nagging at her and the annoying her and the shouting at her, it became so much that when Miss Joyce was 8 months pregnant, she decided to just jackpot. She was like, I don't need this, I don't need you, I'm leaving. Joyce left, and she would go back to her mother's home back in Kayole, which is like, I think, her family home, because that's where she grew up. And she actually delivered a baby daughter named Shanice, her mother's namesake, because her mother is actually called Elizabeth Maua. She would deliver Shanice literally a month after leaving her husband, Mr. Peter. Now, like I said, the two of them, it was just basically Joyce and her mother. So Joyce had to be the one to support her mother and now her newborn baby girl. So Joyce went out and she got a job at a local bakery. Now, after some time, not even some time, I'm guessing it's a few years, judging by the facts I'm about to tell you. After some time, Mr. Peter would finally decide that, hey, I really miss my family. I really miss Joyce. I really want her to come back to me. I really miss my baby girl. And he would get in contact with Joyce and beg for her back to just come back. I promise I've changed and everything. And by this point, Joyce already has her entire whole other thing going. She has her job. She's like living with her mom, living with her child, no stress from anybody. She's just living la vida loca at this point, right? But Peter is like, please come back. I miss you. Right? Right. Now, like I said, this was like there was a long time before the two of them would get back together. But as soon as the two of them got back together, Miss Joyce finds out she's pregnant. And this now sparks up again the whole thing of, oh, you cheated on me when you weren't here, you're a cheat, you're unfaithful, you're an infidel. Right? Right. But Joyce is telling him, like, are you foolish? Like, this is your kid. Like, I literally haven't slept with anybody else. This is your kid. And Mr. Mans is here saying, okay, but you weren't home all this time. And it's just like, but I came home and then we found out you have a kid. Like, what are we saying here? What are we really talking about here? Anywho, the couple would welcome baby Prince Michael after the next 9 months. And Michael's birth, similar to Shanice's birth, was just marred with the two of them constantly fighting, constantly bringing up the paternity of the children. However, Michael's birth was different because with some time, Mr. Peters claims that Michael and Shanice were not his kids would escalate to the point where he would literally stop supporting the family. And this led the couple to split again in 2014. Now, remember when I told you that Peter's family literally claimed they didn't know who Miss Madame Joyce was, like, oh, we thought they broke up, etc. Like, basically them saying that they didn't think that Joyce and Mr. Peter were still together again. Yeah. According to Joyce's mother, this cannot be true because when Joyce and Peter split up again in 2014, the people who went over to the house to go and collect all of Peter's stuff were literally Peter's relatives. Moreover, Joyce's mother actually says that when they went to collect the stuff, they were pretty mean to Joyce, specifically because they actually never wanted Peter to get back together with Joyce after they had broken back way back when in 2006. So Madame Joyce's mother is alleging that this family basically knew all this time that Miss Joyce, Mr. Peter were together, they had kids, everything. They knew everything about the relationship. Like, the relationship wasn't this big secret block. And not only did they know, they were very much against the relationship Peter had with Joyce. They were always telling Peter to break up with Joyce, and Joyce couldn't even turn to them for help with Peter or like talk to someone from that side, specifically because they literally hated Joyce. So when they split in 2014, Peter's family comes to pick up Peter's stuff. They're very mean to Joyce, and Joyce just decides, I'm over it, I'm done, I'm tired. While she's at her mother's house, Farizana tells Joyce and her mom that Peter was up and about in the town telling everybody that, you know, Shanice and Michael weren't his kids. And Joyce was just an infidel and she was just running amok doing everything with everybody in the town. Now, as soon as Joyce's mother, Elizabeth, hears what the hell Peter has been going up and about in the town saying, she was shocked. She now decides, yeah, we're taking him to court. We're going to take him to court because he needs to pay child support first of all, and we're gonna take him to court because he literally needs to take accountability for his kids. Like, he can't just sit around and say, oh, those aren't my kids, she was an infidel, so I'm not taking care of them, when he knows damn well, that these are his kids. Anywho's, I will put a disclaimer here and say some sources said that this is when this decision to take Peter to court started, and some say that it started in 2008. I am more inclined to believe that it's at this point, specifically because there was the split in 2006 and then they literally got married in 2009. There wasn't any children for them to take to court over. You know what I mean? Do you get me? Yeah. So I'm more inclined to believe it's at this point. But moving forth, Miss Elizabeth and Madame Joyce decide to join forces and they take Peter to court for the neglect of the children. Now, Peter would argue that, look, these aren't my kids. We got married, immediately we're married, she's pregnant already, we're having a kid in 9 months. Adding up? No, it doesn't. That's his argument. And he's like, the second kid, Michael, she had left my house, and the second she came back, she finds out she's pregnant. That can't be my kid. The court then decided that, you know what? We're going to have us a little DNA test. How about that, Michael? How about that? And they were supposed to have the DNA test over the next 2 weeks. Now, the week before the last week that the DNA test was to be gotten, I hope you understand. So the first week, right? The first week, they were supposed to use that week and collect the samples from the two children, Shanice and Michael. Now, according to Elizabeth's mother, the children, Shanice and Michael, would face an attempt on their life, literally that week that they were supposed to give up their DNA samples for testing. Now, the story goes like this. Elizabeth says that during the time that the DNA samples were supposed to be collected, the two children were coming back from school on one afternoon. So as the two children are walking home, one woman interrupts them and she's like, hey, you know who I am? I am like, I'm your what? I'm your teacher. Like, I'm one of your teachers. Now the kids are like, yeah, but we never seen you before, girl. Like, what? And she says, don't worry, like, I know who you are. And she quickly switches the subject and she's like, do you guys want something to eat? The kids, being kids, are like, damn, yeah. Especially because this lady literally coerced them. This is a demoness. She was like, do you want mandazi and soda? And you guys know the combo of mandazi and soda used to take it there. I don't want to go there, but I'll go there for mandazi and soda. So the kids are like, definitely we want some mandazi and soda. So they go to the local like kiosk, and their kiosk was high class because they were told that like they had a seating place outside the kiosk. Where Miss J on a kiosk ka here, like they had like a seating place. So I'm suspecting if it's a kiosk or it's a kibanda. One of the two. They go to kiosk kibanda and they sit outside as the lady goes to collect their soda and mandazi, right? Now the little boy Michael, who is by this point he's around like 5 years old, he's like really observant, and he actually notices that when this lady got the sodas, she opened the sodas for them. And then Michael says she put something that looked like strungi, like kitu inakaa kama strungi. She put it into the soda. Now Michael sees this and he like turns to his little sister and he's just like, I don't think we should drink that. I think we should carry this home to drink it, right? Because he had this thought of, I don't know what that is. And number two, he was also thinking like, we're getting late to go home. We have to be in the house now. So he literally tells his sister, you know what? He didn't inform his sister of what he had seen, but he tells his sister, let's go home. Let's take this juice and go home with it. So the two of them go home together and they go home with the soda and the mandazi. They say bye-bye to the teacher. They get home, and you know how somebody can have muhahe? Umeacha kitu yako hapo, wewe umeenda kufanya vitu zako, somebody comes and decides to drink your drink. One person, one woman like that decided to enter their house and drink their drink, and she literally fell unconscious. So the kids are in the room changing their clothes. This woman is now out here fainted. The kids come out. They see the woman fainted. They call, oh, majirani watusaidia nini. The people now come to help. And this lady tells them that, yo, I drank that drink and that drink had something in it and we fainted. As this woman is confessing how she drank a drink that wasn't hers and she fainted. Obviously, I'm not saying she deserves it, but I feel like sometimes, guys, don't touch things if you don't know who they belong to. As this woman is explaining how she drank this drink and she fainted, like the neighbors would decide to go over to ask the kids like what happened, etc., etc. The kids would tell the entire story. So the neighbors would go back to the kiosk that they claim to have been at and ask like, did you see these kids here? The kiosk guy was like, yeah. Did you see a teacher here? The kiosk guy was like, yeah. And he was just like, yeah, but I've never seen that lady before. If she was a teacher, I would know. And everybody is now just like, damn it. And Elizabeth and Joyce concluded that it was probably Peter trying to kill the kids before anything was already done or taken in court. Now, this is an allegation that was made by Elizabeth and, Joyce, her daughter. There was no like conclusive evidence to say Peter was involved in any way, shape, or form, but that's just a side note story. Now, the DNA test would eventually be conducted, and in July of 2019, what did they come back as? They came back as positive, a positive match. Shanice and Michael were definitely Peter's kids. They were also Peter's responsibility financially. So the court orders Peter to be paying 25,000 Kenyan shillings every single month in child support. On top of the 25,000 Kenyan shillings every single month in child support, Peter was then told that he had to be paying rent and school fees for both of these children. Now, Peter really didn't like this. Peter, according to what many people said, would just go around and he was consistently complaining about the fact that he had to pay all of this money. He especially felt pained considering the fact that now he wasn't even with Joyce, and his position was like, I'm literally paying for her to go out there and have relationships with other men. I'm paying her rent for her to be bringing other men home. I don't think this. I'm just telling you what Peter thinks. You get what I mean? Anywho, Peter is at this point really, really vexed. And things also are not really going so great in his life because according to sources, during this time, Peter had actually crashed a plane. Is it a plane or an aircraft? at the Moy Air Base. So he crashed a plane and everything. And apparently, if you crash a plane like as a soldier, everybody looks down on you. So things were really not going great for his career. And then on top of that, he was now transferred from the Moy Air Base to the Laikipia Air Base. I will say that it's uncertain if he crashed the plane at the Moy Air Base or at the Laikipia Air Base, but he did crash a plane and people were not happy with him. He was then transferred to the Laikipia Air Base, like I said. And at the Laikipia Air Base, it's like moving to a new school. Like, you don't know anybody there. You just don't know anyone. And Peter was really suffering because it's like he has no friends. His career is looking dismal at best. And on top of all of that, his family isn't talking to him because his kids would eventually like put two and two together and they would realize that, that lady, that odd teacher was probably sent by their dad to kill them. On top of that, he hadn't seen his kids for a long time and they had forgotten about him. So all they have are all these bad memories of him. There's no like good memory of him that they could remember. So he's not talking to his kids. His kids are like not talking to him. Joyce is definitely not talking to him, and she's living her best life out there. And it's alleged that during this time Peter actually got depression. Now, why do I say that he got depression during this time? It's specifically because people actually reported seeing him doing like really weird stuff. One time he was alleged like it was really, really pouring outside. It was raining. It was giving El Nino vibes. And Peter goes outside and stands outside in the rain and he's just looking up like this and he just didn't move. So I don't know about that one. And things just seemed to get more and more dismal as his little girl's birthday was approaching on November 1st. I think he started to feel a serious disconnect from his family at around this time, according to what he said. He wanted to attend his daughter's birthday on November 1st, but the problem is he felt like he hadn't seen his kids in such a long time and he'd go there and he'd basically be a stranger to these children. So he decided that before November 1st, he was going to invite Joyce and the children over to his airbase in Laikipia, so that they could spend time as a family before Shanice's birthday on the 1st. So he calls up Joyce in October 2019. He asks Joyce, hey, would you be willing to come over and just visit me? On top of that, he tells Joyce, like, I'll even send you, bus fare to show the amount of good faith I have. I promise I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to fight. I just want to get close to my kids. Now, Peter did actually have visitation rights over his children because after the 2019 case court was concluded, it was decided that Peter would not be the sole custody holder, if that's how it's said, over the children. But they did decide that Peter would be able to be given that Peter would have visitation rights over his children. So Joyce is just like, okay, he has visitation rights, fine. But Joyce's mother, Elizabeth, was very anti this idea. And she told Joyce, like, if you go, I have a very bad feeling something will happen to you and these kids. But Joyce was just like, you know what, I literally can't refuse to go because he literally has visitation rights. I think both of them are making good, solid points because it's like, girl, I am legally bound to go. Like, I can't not go. Anywho, Joyce decides that her and the children are going to go, and the trio would leave Kayole on October the 25th of 2019. And the entire time she was like traveling, she was keeping in touch with her mom and her BFFFF for life, Farizana. Now, Joyce would contact them when she arrived on the 25th of October 2019. She told them, hey, I'm here, etc., etc. And that was basically it for that day because they went to sleep and everything. Now, on October the 26th, 2019, literally the next day after Joyce had arrived at the Laikipia Air Base, she literally calls Farizana in the morning at 8 a.m. Now, according to Farizana, Joyce was in a serious state of panic. She proceeds to tell Farizana how she can't find her kids. Yeah, the kids she just came with, she said she couldn't find them. According to what Joyce was saying, Peter had actually taken the kids out and he didn't come home with them. And she says that when she asked Peter, Peter literally looked her in the face and he was just like, oh, they're with someone safe. She's a friend of mine. And I just wanted to keep them there so me and you could have a chat, like a chit chat. And Farizana tells Joyce, you know what, calm down, have the talk with him, have a look-see. I don't think he would hurt the children. Farizana is basically trying to calm down Joyce. Joyce says, okay, fine, cool. I'll calm down. I'll breathe through it. Everything will be fine. And Farizana tells her, yes, that's right, girl. You go. And Farizana tells Joyce, I'll call you later today in the evening so that you can give me an update on whether or not the kids have been brought back. But for now, you just chill, just talk to Peter and finish all of that. The both of them concluded, okay, we'll call each other in the evening, and the both of them hung up. Now, Farizana would keep her promise, and she made a phone call to Joyce at 7 p.m. on that specific night. However, according to Farizana, the phone went unanswered. Farizana would keep on trying to call Joyce, but the phone would keep on going unanswered. Farizana would call Joyce's mom, Elizabeth, and tell her, I can't get a hold of Joyce. And Joyce's mom would be like, I also can't get a hold of Joyce too, girl. What's up? So everybody is now in a state of panic. And it's at this point, as they keep on calling, they realize Miss Madame is not going to pick up. And like I told you, Joyce's mom, Elizabeth, already had a terrible feeling about them even visiting Mr. Peter in the first place. Now, because Elizabeth already had such a bad feeling about this entire trip in the first place, her and Farizana quickly decided, you know what, something bad has happened. Something terrible has happened. This isn't normal, etc., etc. And they decided to go to the police station. Now, because the two of them were living in like separate areas, Farizana went to the Nanyuki police station and filed a missing persons report for Joyce and her two children. On top of that, Elizabeth went to the Soweto police station in, I think, Kayole, and she also filed a missing persons report for Joyce and her two children. Now, both of these police reports would have like different effects and different impacts. I will start with the report that Miss Farizana made. Now, the report Miss Farizana made in Nanyuki was really met very quickly. Farizana, when she went to the police station, she said, we're calling her phone and the phone keeps on going to Mteja, like we're not getting her on the line. So the police deduced that must mean the phone is on, right? Right. So the police decide to track the phone, and they actually successfully tracked it to a 4NTE Matatu Sacco. Now, they tracked it to the 4NTE Matatu Sacco, and when they went there, they were told that the phone was actually with the manager. They went over to the manager and they asked the manager for the phone and how they came about the phone. Now, the manager told them that, hey, this phone was actually found by a cleaner who was like purposely like deep cleaning the matatu. And according to them, they said like the way the phone was positioned, it looked like it was trying to be hidden by somebody. Now, the police would take the phone into quote unquote evidence, and they would just keep it for future reference, because by this point, this was still a missing persons case. So they were just assuming that, you know, when Joyce and the kids come out, we'll give them back the phone. You get me? You get me. Now, Miss Elizabeth, Joyce's mom's police report, had a different outcome altogether. Now, as soon as Miss Elizabeth had made that report at the Soweto police station, they had actually taken their time out of their day to go up and call and ring up Mr. Peter Mugure all the way in the Laikipia Air Base. They called Mr. Peter and asked Mr. Peter about the whereabouts of his family, and I will get into the story that he gave later, but for now, just know they called Peter, they asked Peter, where's your family? And Peter is like, oh my gosh, you can't find them, etc. So he now decides to rush over to the Nanyuki police station to make a police report. Now, Peter would walk in to the Nanyuki police station on the 28th of November 2019 to go and make his missing persons report after he had received this call. Now, when he walks in, he would be met by the person who would be investigating this case, a man by the name of Mr. Kipto. Now, Peter would enter the police station and he looked like agitated. He came with one of his friends and he was in a panic. He was in a frenzy. And he tells the police station, he's basically there saying, I need someone to help me. I need to make a missing persons report for my wife. And Mr. Kipto approaches him and he listens to the entire story. And at the end of it, Mr. Kipto was like, okay, I'll get someone to help you. Somebody came over, helped Peter make the police report, and Peter went home. Now, Mr. Kipto was just like thinking, oh, it's not that deep. Like, it's okay. Everything is fine. Until later that day, he actually received a phone call from Miss Farizana. Now, Miss Farizana informs him of the entire endeavor that they had just been through to get back Miss Joyce Siambua's phone. And as soon as Mr. Kipto hears this, he realizes this isn't a kiki haha. Like, this woman is not just, she didn't just elope and run away from her husband because she couldn't bear him. No. This is a proper missing person. Now, as Kipto is now coming to this realization, the first thing he does is he decides to get everybody's statements on deck, child. Now, according to what Joyce and Elizabeth said, Peter was literally putting up a facade because, like I told you, Peter came into the police station all like frenzied up. He's afraid. He doesn't know where his baby girl is. He's a lie. According to what Elizabeth and Miss Farizana are saying. Elizabeth and Farizana have a very interesting tale to tell for the gods, and they tell Mr. Kipto that Peter was a horrible, horrible husband towards his wife. They basically tell him everything. And they tell him how Peter was literally the last person to see these folks alive. They also tell him how Peter basically took the kids and ransomed, like he took the kids away, and that was the last they heard of the kids. And on top of that, the last time they heard of Joyce was when she was saying how she's about to go and, talk things out with Peter, right? Right. So as Mr. Kipto is listening to all of this, he realizes that, wait a minute, Peter isn't telling me some things here. Peter is not telling me some things. And moreover, if Peter is the level of, abuser that these women are telling me he is, could he possibly sincerely care about his wife to that degree? So Mr. Kipto goes and he contacts Peter, asks Peter, what's up? Peter, let's talk. Let's have a chat. Let's chit chat for a bit. He asks Peter exactly what happened. And Peter would tell a very interesting story. Now, Peter tells Mr. Kipto that, look, I did call my wife on October the 25th, 2019, but it was because we had like a really rough falling out over this case. He even produced the case documents that he still had, and he showed them to Mr. Kipto and showed them like the findings and everything. And he says that, yeah, obviously I was upset at the beginning, but after some time, I realized I wanted to see my family. I missed my wife. I missed my now confirmed kids. And I wanted to be with my family, so I called them over before my little girl's birthday to have a chat, right? Right. He tells Mr. Kipto furthermore that on the morning of October 26th, yeah, he did take the children, as he'd been told, he did take the children, but he didn't take them for any like sinister action. He actually took them to a friend. Mr. Kipto asks which friend. Peter then tells us how he had a friend who lived in Meru County. The friend then traveled on the morning of the 26th from Timau in Meru County all the way to Laikipia to collect the kids so that Peter could have time to talk to his wife. That's just so confusing. Like, what? Why couldn't you just leave them with a babysitter? Like, that's odd. That's a red flag, right? But Peter is basically coming clean. He's saying, yes, what Farizana and the rest are saying is true. I did give the kids to somebody, and this is the person. We would never know the identity of this woman. So buckle up, Buttercup. It's about to get hectic, even more hectic. After Peter says that he gave the kids away, he says he went back to the house to find Joyce. Joyce was obviously in a frenzy, asking exactly where my kids are. And Peter would tell Joyce that, hey, yeah, the kids are fine. Don't worry about it. I left them with a friend that you know, but that I'm close with. And Joyce was just confused at this point because it's like, I don't understand why you would call me and the kids to come here if you had no intention of spending time with the kids, which is a very reasonable argument. Anywho, Peter says that he managed to calm Joyce down, and he explained exactly what he wanted from Joyce, which was for them to just talk things out. Peter says after he explained this to Joyce, Joyce calmed down, and he told Joyce that he wanted them to go out for lunch at the Kirimana Springs Hotel in Nanyuki town. So the two of them would head out for lunch at the Kirimana Springs Hotel, and according to Peter, that's where they spent the rest of their day. Peter says that during the time that they were there, he actually got an urgent call, a business call, that was asking him to head all the way to Nairobi because it was urgent business. Peter says because of this urgent business, he would tell his wife Joyce that they needed to head back to Nairobi. Her and the children needed to go back to Nairobi because he also needed to go back to Nairobi. So the trip had to be cut short. This is what he's saying. He says that after the phone call, he would then take Joyce and ask for the kids to be brought back from wherever they were. And he would ask for them to be brought back so that the kids and Joyce could go back to Nairobi together. Peter says he took the kids and Joyce to the Nanyuki bus station, and he would put them on the 4NTE Sacco to Nairobi. Now, one thing about Inspector Kipto I want you to know very early in this case is he's going to check on some facts. So as soon as Mr. Kipto hears, okay, you put them on the 4NTE Sacco, he said, I'm gonna go and verify that. So Investigator Kipto actually goes over to the offices of the 4NTE Sacco and he asks them, hey, can I have the passenger list from the afternoon of October 26th? The people there were just like, yeah, sorry, we don't have the list. It's not available. And that was a dead end, but there was something else that Investigator Kipto had picked up in Mr. Peter's testimony that he was like, I'm gonna check on that. Mr. Kipto went over to the Kirimana Springs Hotel to ask for the CCTV footage and just to be able to confirm if it is true that Peter was actually there with Joyce on the afternoon of the 26th. Now, apparently or conveniently, the CCTV footage had been recorded over, and according to what they were meaning, the CCTV footage basically wasn't available to confirm or deny, the story of Peter. Recorded over, when they say that, I did kind of understand it like it had been tampered with, but I don't know if that's what it means. You guys can comment down below, I'm not sure. Anyways, investigator Kipto then decides to investigate or question the managers at the hotel, and one of the managers actually said yeah, actually I did see Peter here with Joyce on that specific afternoon. Now, investigator Kipto is like, okay, I guess, but the problem is it's just hearsay. It literally is just hearsay at this point. For one, how do you know it was Joyce? Because you've never laid eyes on Joyce. This is the first time Joyce is coming over. You've never seen her. You get what I mean? And plus, there was literally nothing corroborating this story, which was just a bit suspicious. Anyways, the investigator hits a dead end while trying to figure out if the two of them actually did go to the hotel on the afternoon of October 26th. He hits this dead end, and it's at this point he decides, you know what, I'm just gonna go and have a look at Peter's house and see if everything checks out, if they actually did leave, see if they left anything important. You have to check. I hear if a child leaves a teddy bear, then that child didn't leave, and lies are being told. So anywho's, maybe that's what he was looking for, but I don't know. I'm just inferring. So he decides to make his way over to Peter's place. He goes to Peter's house, and before going, he actually had to seek permission from the Laikipia Air Base itself so he can be able to go and investigate, because it's a place of national security, etc., etc. And he was given permission. However, when Peter caught wind of all of this, he miraculously had something to do in Nairobi. So he wasn't around. Yeah, he wasn't around. So when Inspector Kipto is calling Peter, Peter isn't around. In fact, some sources say that Peter literally took a break. He just went on leave. When this whole investigation started, he just went on leave. And he was being very unhelpful, very uncooperative. He was very hands-offish on a case where your wife and kids that you claim to have missed are missing. But I don't want to judge him. This is just what sources were saying. Anywho's, Peter is called by the Inspector Kipto so that, he can go and have a look at his house. And Peter's like, oh yeah, I'm not there. But you know what I can do? I can help you, access my house. I'm going to call someone who works on the grounds for me, who is going to be able to give you access to my house. Peter makes a call to a 21-year-old man who works on the grounds, known as Collins Pamba. Now, Collins would come over and help Inspector Kipto access the house. Now, the investigator would have a look around, but he actually didn't find anything. The house was as clean as it gets. In fact, a bit too clean, if you ask some. After checking out the house and finding nothing, the inspector would decide to go to the gate and check the logins, and also have a chat with the people at the gate and ask them hey, did you guys see anything? Did you see anyone leave? And when he was at the gate, the people said yeah, we saw her come in, but no one could confirm or deny whether or not they saw her leave. And that was very interesting, because although they couldn't confirm if she left, there was actually an entry of her out, because there's in and out. There was actually her signing that she had left. However, what the investigator realized is the same writing that wrote and signed in for Peter multiple times before was the same handwriting that was signing out for Jane and her two children. So Peter had signed in and out for all of them. And maybe that's why they couldn't see anybody leaving, because maybe nobody left and Peter is just the one who signed out that they actually left. Now, I forgot to mention earlier on that when Inspector Kipto did go to question Mr. Peter at the first place, when he went to ask Peter for his story as to what happened, etc., he did seize Peter's phone and also some documentation to just help with the investigation. I did forget to mention that. I am very sorry. But that's going to be relevant at this point in the case. Now, on the 15th of November, the inspector is still racking his brain trying to figure out exactly what happened to Miss Joyce and her children. And that's when he would receive a call from the Laikipia DCI, the big guns is now in this, telling him or ordering him to detain and interrogate Mr. Peter Mugure and confiscate his second phone. Because like I just told you guys, his first phone was taken during the first interrogation. So he's being told this by the DCI, and obviously he's curious why. Turns out that Mr. Peter had actually gone to the Laikipia police station to follow up on his wife's case, to ask like, how far with my baby girl have you guys found my wife? Now, as he's there, he makes a very odd request, and he asks to see the first phone that he had taken away and confiscated. Now, the person who was there for some odd reason decides to give this man his phone. And it's at this point that Mr. Peter takes the phone and literally in front of this police officer's eyes, opens the phone, deletes everything, and on top of deleting everything, resets the entire phone to factory settings. Anywho's, as all of this is happening, the person who is behind the counter eventually comes around to their senses and snatches the phone away from Peter after basically he's already erased any type of evidence that could have been on that phone. Now, it's at this point that the DCI would call Inspector Kipto and tell the inspector, you need to, arrest and interrogate him and ask him exactly what's up. Now, Mr. Peter would be arrested on the 15th of November for interrogation, and literally, I kid you not, the literal next day, on November 16th, the family of Mr. Peter would be found dead. Now, on November the 16th at 4:30 p.m., investigators would dig up the bodies of Joyce, Shanice, and Michael, all buried on top of each other inside gummy bags and wrapped in rope. Now, the bodies were buried in shallow graves in a cemetery in Kilimo, which was literally just 9 minutes away from the Laikipia Air Base. Now, this was truly devastating to Elizabeth's mother, specifically because I told you guys how it had always been them against the world. It was always the two of them together fighting through, just breaking barriers, doing stuff. And especially because mother was so much older now, she had nobody else to take care of her with Joyce gone. Joyce's mother would make a public plea for help, for people to help her be able to transport the body of her daughter and her 2 children to Kitui, which is where she wanted them to be laid to rest. I'm unsure if anybody really did pitch in to help her, but I do know that the bodies were moved eventually. Now, during the time the bodies were in Nanyuki, an autopsy would be carried out on all of them, and it would show that Joyce had actually died from internal bleeding caused by blunt force trauma to the head. The 2 children sadly would have died by strangulation with a rope. Now, as all of this is unraveling and the news is reporting on Joyce and her children being found murdered, there were some people who took to social media to express their belief that Joyce basically deserved what she got. One user said, Joyce Yambua had infected Major Peter Mugure with HIV, and that's why he developed doubts about her and her children. They went to court as usual, and as usual, the judge would rule in favor of Joyce and her 2 children. Who even said he had AIDS? Like, what? Somebody else said another reason being that Peter Mugure's salary, another reason for the murder, being that Peter Mugure's salary was being divided into almost 3/4, and 2/4 would go to Joyce Yambua to take care of the children. So Peter felt really angry and jealous for feeding a woman that was being screwed by another man, and that's why he took such deadly action. Now, how you have the post and then underneath people can comment. One commenter by the name of Christopher Njihia said, the children were innocent to the matter, N, with the letter N, they didn't deserve to die, but let the mother carry her full burden, and I think the children were not invited, but Siombua came with them as a defense because she was suspicious about her actions. You guys, I don't know when in this society it has become acceptable to just go around murdering people because they cheated or whatever. First of all, we have literally no proof that she cheated. Second of all, that she gave him AIDS. And just this mentality that it's okay to just do the unspeakable to somebody because you feel personally harmed. That's not how normal societies function, and we should really cut the cameras on that one. Anywho's, as everyone is on social media, trying to figure out exactly what happened, coming up with theories and saying, maybe this and this happened, maybe this is what happened, somebody would come out with the full story. And that is a man by the name of who? Mr. Collins Pamba. Now, you may have heard of Collins Pamba. Yeah, you have actually. Collins is the man that Peter had called when he decided to take a leave of absence when his entire family was being looked for and he was in Nairobi. Remember that time that Inspector Kipto had gone to Peter's house to check up on everything that was going on, and miraculously Peter was not at home. He was in Nairobi, and he told a man by the name of Collins Pamba to escort or show around Inspector Kipto. This is that same Collins Pamba, the grounds worker that showed Inspector Kipto around. Now, 21-year-old Collins Pamba would drop the bomb of a lifetime, and he would actually confess to being an accessory to murder for Joyce Yombua and her other 2 kids. Here's what Collins Pamba came out to say. Now, Collins said that on the evening of the 26th of October, Mr. Peter would contact him and he was like sounding really, really panicked. And he would tell Collins that he needed Collins to come over ASAP. Now, Collins was like, what's wrong? You know, what's up? Like, nani, why are you panicked? Why are you panicking? Unanishtua. And he says that Peter wouldn't tell him what's wrong. Peter just said, I have an assignment to you, come. I have an assignment for you, come. And he started even threatening Collins that if he didn't come, basically Collins would, land in serious problems. So Collins is like, okay then. And Collins shows up to see what's up. Collins would show up at the location he was told to meet Peter at, but when he showed up, Peter wasn't even at the location. So Collins would show up at first and then leave after some time because Peter wasn't there. Now, after Collins leaves, Peter literally calls him back and he's like, where are you? I'm here. Collins would make his way back to the base and they would meet up with Peter at 10 p.m. on the night of October the 26th. Collins says as soon as he sees Peter, he asks Peter like, what's up? What's going on? And it's at this point Peter literally takes Collins all the way to his apartment. Now, Peter lived in apartment A3, but as they're walking over to Peter's apartment, Peter diverts away from A3 and goes into apartment A4. Now, Collins is confused because, like I said, Peter's apartment is apartment A3. Why would he be going into apartment A4? When they enter, Peter literally enters and locks the door behind the both of them. Collins is looking around like, oh, okay, this isn't funny now. Come on now. And as soon as Peter locks the door, he tells Collins to sit on the bed and be silent. Collins sits on the bed and he's now sitting there wondering, are we not putting on the lights? Because Peter literally didn't put on the lights and he starts moving into the interior of the room. So it's clear we're not putting on the lights, honey. As soon as Peter is moving into the room, he puts on the torch for his phone. And he's now moving through the room with like the torch from his phone. He moves into the bathroom of the apartment, and because it's like really dark, Collins says he couldn't initially make out what he was looking at, but with time he noticed that he was looking at like the hair of a woman, like the hair of a woman. And he says like he noticed that the hair was sticking out of a black gummy bag. Now, Collins says after some time, he would also notice a second bag with the head of with a shaven head, which looked like the head of a boy. And he says the sizes of the bags looked like these were children. They weren't really big people. They weren't adults. Now, Collins says as he's looking at all of this and going into a little panic because he's realizing that this is potentially a murder scene, Peter noticed that Collins was actually getting a bit uneasy and he was just panicking. Peter noticed that Collins was panicking. And Peter turns to Collins and he's like, this is the job that I want you to do. Now, Collins is just like, I can't, what do you want me to do, guy? And Peter goes on to tell Collins how he wants Collins to help him take out the bodies from the room and carry it to his car. So that they can dispose of the bodies. Collins looks Peter dead in the face and he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And Peter is literally just like, if you don't, and now Peter starts throwing out threats at Collins, and he's just like, if you don't do it, I'll make sure you get fired. He starts threatening his job, and then after that he now starts saying how he'll kill him. So he's basically trying to fearmonger Collins into helping him. Collins didn't budge, you guys. Collins was like, I guess it is what it is. In Aumabat, I'm not going to help you dispose of dead bodies. No. He quickly switched up the tactic. Instead of threatening Pamba and telling Pamba, hey, do you know I could have you killed, etc., Peter quickly switches up the tactic and tells Mr. Collins that, hey, look, wacha tuache maneno mengi. boss, wacha story mob, tuongee, tunaweza shikana, we can understand each other. And Collins literally offers Pamba a job in the military air base. And he tells him, you know me, I'm a high-ranking officer. Apparently, he was a corporal or a major. I'm not sure. And he's like, you know me, I'm a high-ranking guy. I can change your life. I can do this for you. I can get you into here. And according to what Collins said, this actually changed his mind. Collins was like, fine. If you can get me a job here, I'll help you dispose of these bodies and I won't tell anybody and this will be our little secret. And as soon as Colin says this, the two of them get to picking up the bodies of the children. Colin said that they first took baby Shanice to the car, and the car that they were using was a Subaru Impreza, so you already know it's not that big. So at the boot, Colin says that they had to lift the black mat at the boot. They lifted it and they put the children where the spare tire usually goes. They stuffed the children in there. They put Shanice first, and then they went back for baby Michael second, and then they covered it with the black tarp. Now, Colin says he thought this was over. This was it. This was the last of all of this. But Mr. Peter literally looks at Collins and tells Collins, no, follow me, there's somebody else. Now, Collins hadn't seen anybody else, so he's like confused. Only for them to now go back and actually go into apartment A3, now Peter's actual apartment, into another bloody murder scene. Now, Colin says as they entered apartment A3, he didn't see anything at first, but then they had to enter the bathroom to find a woman covered with a white tarp over her face, like a white type of kikoi. Let me not say tarp, kikoi over her face, to like hide her face, and she was bloodied, and the kikoi was also bloodied. Now, Colin says that he would help Mr. Peter put Joyce's body into like a black gummy bag, and also tie it up with ropes. After that, they took Joyce's body to the back of the car and started to make their way to the cemetery 9 minutes away from the Laikipia Air Base. And it was at this point that Collins asked him, like, you know, who is that lady? Who are those children? And Peter tells Mr. Pamba that Joyce was a woman that he loved and that he actually wanted to marry her and make her his second wife. Turns out, Mr. Peter, who's accusing Joyce of infidelity, allegedly has an entire other first wife that nobody knows about. Anywho, he says he wanted to marry Joyce, make her his second wife, and honestly, he was really down for Joyce, but the problem with Joyce and the problem with her was that she was just not a faithful woman. And she only wanted him for his money. That she was just a gold digger. She wanted him for his money so that he could spend that money on her and her kids. So he's not even saying that the children that are literally in the back of the boot are his kids as well. He's trying to make it seem as though, you know, Joyce's grand master plan was to basically dump somebody else's children on him. Peter then continues to tell Collins that the woman also was like trying to interfere in his relationship with his first wife, and that's just what drove him crazy. Now, later on in this case, Peter would be asked exactly what happened between him and Joyce that night, and it was really not anything the way he said it to Pamba. Like, it was not anything the way he said it to Pamba. According to what Peter would say later on, the two of them actually got into a fight that evening. And according to Peter, Joyce would say some really mean things to him during the argument. First of all, he first claimed that Joyce would tell him that his manhood was small, and like she basically alluded to the fact that it was like torture to do the deed with him. On top of that, he alleges later on that she said during the argument that he actually bribed the DNA people, like the people for the DNA test result, to show that Shanice and Michael were actually his kids. And like this just drove him up a wall. The fact that she said his manhood was, you know, not manning enough, and the fact that she said the children were actually not his, etc., etc. This is what he's alleged to have said later, but at this point, this isn't what he said. This isn't what he said at this point. Anyway, Pamba and Mr. Collins make it to the cemetery, bury the family, and Pamba would be dropped off back in town at around 1 a.m. Now, this is obviously entering the realm of the next day. Now, Pamba says that the next day, Mr. Peter would contact him to tell him to not forget to fill in the documents required for his military application. On top of that, Mr. Collins says that Peter would send him 4,000 shillings to facilitate for his application. And after all of that, Peter would tell Mr. Collins to go back to apartment A3 and A4, the murder scenes, and basically clean everything up. Collins says that the two of them would continue to keep in contact, especially because after this, Peter did go on leave. So when he was on leave, he was contacting Collins to ask like how far with the case, what's going on. And that's why he particularly decided that, you know, Collins was the right guy to show around Inspector Kipto, because he knew very well that Collins was down for him, because Collins had interest as well in them not being caught. Collins comes out with all of this, and as he comes out with all of this, he is initially arrested as like alongside Mr. Peter. I think it's probably because they just wanted to be sure like he's actually telling the truth, and it's not like they did this deed together and then somebody anaruka story. You get what I mean? And so the two of them were in custody at the same time. Now, as Peter has now been arrested alongside Collins Pamba and the public is finding out about all of this, Peter's family decides that this is the best time to go on a press run, basically advocating for Peter's innocence. They were just like, my brother would never. You know, one of the sisters was literally just like, my brother is such a good person. He doesn't smoke bangi. And she's like, he doesn't even drink. He's just such a great guy. You know, basically they were saying everybody's lying on his name. On top of that, his family decided to go on, you know, national television and national radio to just be telling people how they didn't even know that the brother was still with Joyce. They didn't even know they were still together. And on top of that, they didn't actually know that he had children. That was the one that took everybody back, because as soon as they said this one, literally Joyce's mother came out and was like, that's cap on cap, because you guys pushed her out of the house. Like, everybody was just talking. Everything was just out there being said. Now, as all of this is ongoing, like I said, Peter and Collins Pamba are in, like, with the police. They're in police custody. Now, Peter is due to have his hearing and everything, and he's really scared at this point, especially because he had now heard that they had Collins Pamba in the cells, you know, the one person who knew everything that had happened, allegedly. Everything that had happened was now, you know, in cahoots with the police. And he had no way to talk to Collins Pamba. So Peter decides to try and apply for, is it bond or is it bail? Basically to be let out. Because he was just saying, I'm not going to go anywhere. I promise. I'm just going to be around. Just give me this chance. Peter is asking the police for a chance. And as he's like in court, literally begging to be let out as he's awaiting trial, Peter would then send his sister over to Collins Pamba to literally beg Collins Pamba not to testify against him. Let me tell you one thing about Collins Pamba. Collins Pamba is gonna tell on you. One thing about Collins Pamba, he's gonna tell on you. And I love that. I love it. Like, I told you guys, one thing about me, I will snitch. Like, don't come to me with, oh, I shot, I will snitch. I will tell. And that's what Collins Pamba did, child. Collins Pamba, as soon as he was approached by Peter's sister, he gingerly carried himself and he went over to the police and he said, I need to talk to somebody. Yeah. He went and he talked to somebody, and what did he say? He sang like a bird. He said, look, these people have approached me. They have told me that I shouldn't testify. They said they'll give me such and such if I, obviously they probably offered him something not to testify. I know they wouldn't just go there based off of their goodwill and hoped like, oh, he's just gonna be a nice guy. And he snitched, and let me tell you, when he snitched, Collins Pamba allegedly managed to get himself a deal. Now, what do I mean by this? Because Collins Pamba allegedly now was like a certified sure thing witness, like his thing was corroborated, considering the fact that the actual people were scared that he was going to talk. Police were like, he actually is a witness, like he's a valid witness. So it's alleged that this is what made Collins Pamba be taken off of the, you know, like of the prosecution side. Like he was no longer prosecuted, and he was actually now turned into a witness to witness and testify against Mr. Peter. And on top of that, his sentence that he would have faced if he was tried alongside Peter would have probably been like in the 15s to life imprisonment, child. I don't know, but it would have been much longer. But guess what he got? He got only 5 years in jail. 5 years in jail was what he was gonna get. That was the plea deal he took, and he took it, child. And things are really not looking great for Peter, because around this time, Peter was also fired from the military, and this meant that he had no money to be able to pay for lawyers and all of that stuff. And he actually decided to sue the KDF for firing him. He felt like it was like an unlawful termination, and he decided to sue them. Now, I don't know how far with this court trial, like with the KDF court trial, how far with the Collins Pamba case right now. Now, the case has been very much so delayed. First of all, it was delayed specifically because the first judge that was handling this entire case was transferred. And then the next judge who was asked to take the case said she couldn't handle the case because she had previously handled a case dealing with Collins Pamba. So she didn't believe like she would be impartial in like giving the verdict or hearing the case itself. So yeah, she decided she didn't want, so they had to find another judge for that. Now, on top of all of the judges basically being changed and rearranged, Collins Pamba at some point would also decide that he was going to represent himself, because he said he had something important to say to the court. I don't know how that went, because the court, nothing has been concluded yet. We don't know exactly what's going on. And they're also being pretty hush-hush about everything about this case. In one of the like court is it proceedings or one of the sessions, the journalists in the courtroom were actually asked to leave, specifically because the case is very closely linked to like the air bases, etc. And like issues concerning the nation's security were being discussed, like, you know, how the air base runs, you know, who is in charge of what. Those type of things wouldn't want to be like leaked to the general public, because it is viewed as an issue of national security. Anywho, guys, that's it from me today. I'm gonna just finish this makeup look off. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's case. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned that nothing justifies killing somebody at the end of the day, because they're still a human being. And yeah, that's it from me this week. I hope to see you again next week, same time, Saturday, 7 p.m. East African time. And if you want to see more true crime or more of me during the week, follow my TikTok at Paige Speaks. You can also follow my Instagram at Paige Speaks. And you can also follow my Twitter at Paige Speaks. Anyway, guys, that is it from me this week. I hope to see you again next week or over on my other social media platforms. Bye!